All right. Well, good evening, everybody who's here and everybody who's tuning in YouTube from here and around the world and country. Jason don't know we generally have some people from London that tune in and they stay up late to watch. Do not turn your television off, your phone off. We're getting ready to really get blessed and educated when it comes to finances and things of this nature. And so we just privileged to be doing ministry, not just church, but ministries, things that will help you in your everyday life. And tonight we have Jason Landers. Jason is a senior wealth advisor at Keel Point, and he knows what he's talking about. Many years in the business and doing well. And him and I started. We've been knowing each other for a while, but we started a really good conversation of knowing one another and getting to know one another a few months ago, talking about diversity and inclusion. And we talked about some things that we could do in our community and abroad in a sense that to help people, because we talk about diversity and inclusion, but we want to move the needle. And let me say this right quick before Jason come up. One thing that we did do, what happened is that we his company Keel Point now sponsors have two interns that intern from Alabama A&M Business School, and that's working for them. They also send about 10 students to to a conference. They doing some great things. So Keel Point, just hats off to them. Hats off to Jason Landers and all that he's doing in our friendship. And this won't be the last time that he's with us talking about finances. So put your hands together real loud for Jason Landers as he comes. Make sure he unmuted.
Before we start this year with coronavirus, we've been stuck in our office and doing Zoom calls and on the telephone. But this is one of the most enjoyable things that I do is to get out and just educate and talk about finances with people. And it's just one of those things that you can't do over a telephone. So we're going to go through some things. We're going to talk about some things. But at the same time, at the end, some questions. The idea is
Check.
okay. Thanks, Doc. Um, but yeah, just being out here talking to folks, and we're going to go through some information, but we're going to save some time at the end just for some questions. The idea here is not to overwhelm. We've had some changes over the last year as far as finances. Those of you that invest in 401k plans and IRAs and things along those lines, we've had some legislation changes that certainly impact folks. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But let's go ahead and we'll jump in. I know folks over here it may be tough, but the title for today's presentation is "Retiring with Confidence." There's always we always get questions as financial planners. Am I starting too late? What do I need to do to retire? How can I get this done? I only have a few years to really focus, and so that is one thing that by going through certain things in planning, you can retire with confidence. Um, so here are some of the things we're gonna look at, and I know we have 45 minutes, so some of the stuff we're gonna scoot through pretty quickly. But investing 101, that can be overwhelming in itself. You have so many things that you have to pick from, and what types of investments, and what's right for me given a certain amount of risk. So that's one of the things. Understanding risk. That's always a gray area. People really don't know how much risk they're willing to take until you go through something like we went through in March, or when you go through 2008 and 2009, which was the financial crisis. So risk can rear its head at times where all of a sudden it triggers. I think I am taking too much risk, and it's just the opposite as well. Some people, maybe they're not taking enough. Maybe they could have actually absorb more risk than what they're taking. And so having that, clear is important. A couple of things on IRAs, Social Security. That's always the question: when should I take Social Security? the million-dollar question. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The Secure Act, that's the piece of legislation that was rolled out last year that does have some impact on retirement accounts. Not take but a minute here about Keel Point. So we are headquartered here in Huntsville. We have offices in 6 states. When I started, I came over from Merrill Lynch in 2001 and joined. I started with Merrill Lynch in 2001, came over to what was once called Blue Creek in 2009. We had 11 employees. And so now we're up to 73 employees. So it's been fun to really see the growth of the organization. But our main focus is working with families. So that's really what we do. We also have corporate services side, and we also do some institutional things as well. Okay, when you think about financial planning, so this is kind of the starting point that I always try to focus on with folks is, you have all these things below that line. Those are things that your financial advisors or you can read about, or different strategies, different tools that you can access. But it's the stuff above the line that I always try to encourage families to sit down and talk about. A business has a mission statement, a vision statement. It's my argument, I think that families should have the same, because if something happens, you want to know, hey, there's a plan in place. Because it's so hard to plan for the unexpected, but to have those things in writing, I think is just really important, because that helps drive your family towards certain goals and objectives. Limiting beliefs. So this is one, as you can imagine, we hear quite a few. I'm not saving enough to reach my goals. I don't have enough time to really make a difference. It's all too complicated, so I must be way behind. I've been burned in the market before, so it's likely going to happen again. So those are things. And then the last one, I don't think my children would know where to start if something happened to us. So that's just different things that by going through a financial planning process can be really helpful from that standpoint. Here's one, again, just kind of a principle. Planning to a portfolio, not a portfolio to a plan. And what I mean by that is you don't pick some investments and then try to build a financial plan around what you pick. You want to have a foundation in a financial plan. Then from there, you say, okay, well, what am I going to use to build into this financial plan? It always starts with that, and that's really developing, understanding what your goals and values are, what your time horizon is. All those things play into it. What your long-term objectives, risk tolerance, and you just go down the line. And so having that financial plan in place, that's what drives the overall investment decisions. So Investments 101, we're going to start in here. So let's talk about types of accounts. So your family decides, well, I want to go ahead and we want to start saving for retirement. We want to be aggressive in this. And so you have a couple of different accounts. First one is taxable accounts. So these would be things like just brokerage accounts where you buy some stocks or mutual funds, things like that. The deal with taxable accounts is you are going to pay taxes on dividends. If you buy and sell things, there's capital gains taxes that you'd be exposed to as well. So that's one type of an investment account. All different institutions have them. Tax deferred accounts. So now we're getting into accounts that are specifically designed for your retirement. Okay, so IRAs. Think IRAs. If you're working for a company, they have employer-sponsored plans. So 401ks, things like that. The money in tax deferred accounts is added in pre-tax. So that's basically if you make $100,000 and you put $15,000 into your 401k, you're only going to be taxed at $85,000 for that year. So it reduces your taxable income. Okay, it goes into those accounts and it grows tax deferred. So you don't pay taxes until you have to start taking money out of those plans. There are typically age restrictions when you need to start taking money out. And that is something that this Secure Act that I mentioned earlier, that law has changed a little bit. So those of you that are approaching retirement or have family that's approaching retirement, the age in which you have to take money out has changed. And then the last one, understanding the difference between traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. So on the next page, so focus in just a couple minutes on that. So in a traditional IRA, you can put up to $6,000 into that account. It's tax deductible, grows tax deferred, and you get taxed when it comes out. With a Roth IRA, the difference there is it's just like you're putting money into a bank account. It's after tax money. Same limits apply. You can only put $6,000. If you're over 50, you can see you get a catch up of $1,000. That goes into the Roth. That money grows tax free. So your whole lifetime, you put that money in. Let's say you put $100,000 in and it grows to $250,000. When you take that money out, it's tax free. Okay, so that's the advantage to the Roth. Now, the downside to the Roth is there are income limitations. So if you make over a certain amount, you can't contribute to a Roth. Now, fortunately, a lot of companies have started to roll out, to where they offer Roth 401ks as well. So those income limitations don't apply through a corporate company-sponsored plan. So those are the two main types of IRAs. A SEP IRA is one that if you are a sole proprietor, own your own business, small business, you can set up a SEP IRA account. And then you can see the limits for 401ks. This year, if you're under age 50, you can put $19,500 into the plan. If you are over, you can put $26,000 in. So again, those are the main accounts when it comes to retirement. Questions to ask when you're investing. So this is, when you're picking an investment, you always want to know what you're getting into, right? That's important. So number one, the big question is, what is your time horizon? If I have a client that comes to me and says, Jason, I've got $50,000 or $20,000. I want to invest it, but I need it 6 months from now to buy a car. Well, the stock market's not the place that I'm going to tell you to put your money, right? Because what happens in that case is if the market goes down, you don't have time to recover those funds in time to buy the car in 6 months. So time horizon is extremely important. How much risk am I comfortable taking? That's the one, we're going to talk a little bit here in the future about the importance of understanding what your true risk tolerance is. And age, I always get that question, well, I'm getting older, I'm close to retirement, so that means my risk tolerance should be a lot lower, right? Safer. That's not necessarily the case. We have clients who are young, but they just can't stand risk. And we have clients who are older, who are retired, who own businesses or whatever. They understand risk and they understand reward. And so they choose to continue on a certain path, a certain risk level. So it's not just purely defined on someone's age. Does the investment offer liquidity if I need access to the funds? So, that's another big one. And I'm going to use an annuity, for example. So if you buy an annuity, a lot of times those annuities have lockup periods where you can't get that money without penalty for a certain period of time. So I'll use the car example again. If you need, that money in a year or 2 years to buy a car, you want to have something that's liquid, something that you can get to without penalty. And some investment products do carry those penalties. So that's something you certainly want to know. What are the tax implications? Okay, so if you're in an investment and you buy it today and you sell it on December 28th and you make $5,000, that is a short-term capital gain. So in that case, you're going to pay ordinary income taxes on that. So it really all has to do with how long you hold an investment, if it's a long-term or a short-term. So those are, again, looking at different items on an investment. What are your return expectations? This is a good one. So you can imagine, there's times we'll sit down and someone will say, well, I want a 10% return, but I don't want any risk. And so certainly if somebody finds that, let me know, because I don't know of anything that doesn't have any risk that can do that. So really having clear expectations on your investment. There's certain things that, and we're going to talk a little bit about risk and reward, but there are certain things that are expected to return so much, and then there are things that carry a lot more risk, but the return potential over time is higher. So That's another one. And then what is the cost? Really having an understanding and transparency on what that investment is costing you. Because sometimes there are investment products that have different layers of fees and things like that. So you want to know, what is this costing me? But more importantly, what is my return after I pay those costs, right? So you got to kind of look at things apples to apples from that standpoint as well. So here it is, risk reward. Some of you may have seen this chart back in finance classes, but basically what you're looking at is return along the Y and risk along the X. And so what you're doing is you're going from a risk-free rate. So let's think of like a treasury bill or FDIC savings account. So something that has no risk. But in this environment, as you all know, if you have bank accounts, not paying a whole lot of interest right now. But you have that there for safety, right? That's the idea behind it. As you move to the right and you take more risk, okay, in an investment, let's say you go to, maybe a stock fund or a corporate bond fund, you're moving out on the risk curve. So your return potential should go up under that scenario. So that's, when you're looking at your risk tolerance and really what your objectives are, understanding that as you move out in terms of risk, you're going to have more of this, but over time, you should have greater return potential. Size and style. So if you invest in stocks, and some of you that have 401ks, you may have seen a chart like this, but you can basically invest in different size companies. So you have your mega cap companies, your really big companies like an Apple, over $100 billion of capitalization. You have your large cap companies, which a lot, you'll see traded on different exchanges. Mid caps are kind of middle of the road. They are from $1 billion to $10 billion. And then you get into your small cap. So a company, here in town, like an Adtran, that's publicly traded, but they're not as big as an Apple. So you can invest within your 401k. They have funds that are targeted to those different types of investments. So it's not all just one stock fund. There's different categories. Now, I will say, too, within 401ks, you sometimes have these age target funds, target date funds. And so in those, you can invest towards a certain year of retirement. So if you know that you're going to retire in the year 2030, sometimes you can find those funds within your plan that are designed to be invested in a way to get you to 2030 with a certain amount of risk. So that's the other way within a plan. Okay, so this gets into a little bit of risk, and I know it's probably hard for y'all to see this, so I'm going to just walk through. This actually shows the coronavirus pandemic that started in February, okay? And so what you're looking at is ground zero right here, and each line represents, so the green one is the S&P 500. The dark blue one is a mix of 40% stock and 60% bonds. And then the light blue one is 60% stocks and 40% bonds. So what this is showing you is how long it took from the very bottom that we hit on March the 23rd for that particular investment to get back up to break even. Okay, so the S&P did not get back up to even until August 10th. Now, a lot of people, and I can tell you this from my conversations, had no idea that we were close to being back to break even. Just because, on the news you just see, it seems like things are so bad from the economy and the market that this kind of snuck up on a lot of people that we've actually, as we started to reopen, markets recovered and started to improve. The dark blue line, you can see, that is a much more conservative portfolio. So it did not take near as much of the downturn, hence it didn't take as long for it to come back up, okay? And then the 60-40 is more of a moderate type portfolio. It took until was it July for that one to get back up to even. So again, I keep talking about risk, but what we don't want folks to do is go through a March and then jump out of the boat. right? Because what happens when you jump out of the boat, you drown, you get out, and it typically takes way too long to get back in until markets recover, and then you get back in and you've missed out on that big move up that we saw from April through where we are right now. So really having your risk tolerance right, I can't emphasize it enough, really goes a long way with a financial plan. Down here, you can see this is over the last 20 years, different asset classes, different investments, and how they did over 20 years. And if you remember that chart we just looked at, so basically as you move from the right to the left, the further out in risk you're going. So you can see over 20 years, if you invested in the S&P 500, you average 6.1% per year. But you're taking a little more risk for that. If you invested in bonds, you average 5%. So you're not taking as much risk. So that's that trade-off between risk and reward. Okay. This one talks a little bit more. So this is looking at asset allocation. And again, when we talk about risk, you have 5 different, call them allocations, all the way from aggressive to really conservative. So here in this aggressive one, so what that shows is the financial crisis and what the drop in the value of that was during the financial crisis. And so there you can see it lost 50.3%. So that would be a portfolio of basically all stock. Okay. It took 47 months for that to get back up to where it was. Okay, so 47 months to get back up to even. If you look at the conservative one, it dropped 20% over that during the financial crisis, and it took 9 months to get back up to even. So again, you're kind of looking at, what, and then across the top here you can see what the average return. So your return over 10 years was 9.5%, and over here it was 6. So are you willing, to take what happened during the financial crisis in order to get that, or are you more comfortable in something that's a little more conservative? All right, so understanding risk. So I'm going to skip this one for time. So we use this tool it's called Riskalyze. And basically what it allows us to do is to really quantify risk. Okay, those of you who have done any investing in the past, you probably filled out a questionnaire. It asked you some questions. What if this happened? What would you do? What if that happened? And it gave you this answer that you're, moderate, or you're aggressive, or you're conservative. With Riskalyze, what we're able to do is we're able to show folks in a certain environment, if you were invested this way, this would have happened. And so, for example, this was the 2013 bull market, okay? So in this scenario, this particular person has a risk score of 52, okay? The market that year was up 32%. So it was a really good bull market year in 2013. This particular person made 16%. So about half of what the market did because they were taking half the risk, right? So that's that trade-off again. Here's the bear market. So this shows the financial crisis in 2008. So in 2008, the market dropped 36.8%. Okay, so that would have represented, this is $1 million portfolio, that would have represented $368,000. I've always found that people seem to relate more to dollars than they do percentages, right? When you look something up and it says percent, and then you look at what the actual dollar impact is, that's a different story. And so in this particular case, the more conservative portfolio lost 17%. And I will tell you too, risk changes. Your risk tolerance changes over time. It's not something that you're going to say, I'm this and I'm always going to be this. And that's why it's so important to have those ongoing conversations to make sure that where you are from an investment standpoint, that you're comfortable with that, right? Because it can change. All All right. So I'll tell you what. Anybody have a question on risk? Anything that stood out there, and then we'll move into retirement. No questions. Yeah. So the question was somebody that comes in that's kind of middle of the road. Is there a recommendation for someone like that? And the answer to that question, going back, would be looking at like a growth and income type benchmark. That is something that's pretty much right down the middle of the fairway. You're about a 50% mix of offensive stuff like stocks and 50% more defensive stuff. And there's other things we're going to talk about too from a risk management standpoint. Portfolio or understanding what your risk is, that's important. But there are other things that you can layer into a financial plan that actually manages risk as you move towards retirement. Yeah.
How? Thank you, Josh Gray. Would a person, if they want to start investing, maybe they've never invested ever, how do they get started? Do they go see somebody like you? How, I got this X amount of money that I want, middle of the road. What do I do? And maybe you're going to answer that later on this, but I need to ask.
Yeah, I mean, they're sure.
I'd like to add on to that. What would be a minimum amount for somebody to come? Where do I start? What if I say I only have $5,000? Maybe what if I have $2,500? Or do I have to have a certain amount? Is there certain levels for me to go at the beginning stages?
No, I mean, I've never been one to talk about minimums. I think everybody, no matter what level you start at or how you want to start, I think having a good conversation with an advisor is important. Because just little things, I think more as being a financial advisor, I think there's a lot more just helping folks from a behavior standpoint. That's a big part. If you don't have somebody that can talk you off the ledge or help you through those tough decisions, that can lead to some tough results. And so, definitely having a conversation with someone is a great starting point. That's always a good way to get some guidance. And if that's a lot of folks who have 401k plans, I'm assuming a lot of them will come out and will give some type of workshops and help folks on understanding what retirement planning and what investing is all about. So that's always a good resource through your employer. But if that's not available, then certainly contacting someone for advice is a good way. Any other questions on risk? We'll circle back around to risk later, but anybody? Okay. All right, so let's move into retirement. Who wants to retire? Okay, so let's first talk about some of the challenges that families face when it comes to retirement. This is always, those of you that are football fans in here, if you're playing a team next week, you want to scout what your challenges are going to be. What is it that these guys are going to do, and how do I stop them? Right. So by knowing what your issues are or what you're faced with is half the battle. And so some of the main risks in retirement, I'm going to bounce around here, so pardon that, but longevity is one. People are living longer, so you're having to plan for a longer duration in retirement. It used to be where folks would work till they're in their 70s and then they'd pass away when they're 81 or 82 years old. So you didn't have a whole lot of time in retirement. Now people are retiring at 55 and 60 and they're living 90, 95 years old. So you have to have, that in mind, that we're planning for a longer time for our money to last. Savings. So that's another one. I have a slide in here towards the end that focuses on savings and the power of compounding. Any younger folks in here, I can't encourage you more than to start early if you can, because the more years that you contribute and you save, the better it works in your favor down the road. It's just the compounding of interest. So we're going to talk about that. Market volatility. So you think about that. You think about somebody that retires in the summer of 2007. Use that as an example. So you retire in the summer of 2007, and then bam, the financial crisis comes in. You're hit with 2008, 2009. You had a 52% drop from top to bottom in the market, and you just retired, right? So timing, and again, we talked about there's other ways to manage risk for an event like that, but that's one of those risks that's out there. We just don't know. We don't have a crystal ball what the market's going to be 6 months from now when you want to retire. So having that in mind and having your investments in a way that we can protect against that. Inflation. So we know that we have to have our investments keep up with inflation. If you basically at a 3% inflation rate, your purchasing power gets cut in half every 24 years. Okay, so think about that, right? So a loaf of bread today, 24 years from now, is going to cost you double. So having everything allocated in a way that you can keep up with inflation, you don't want to lose purchasing power over time. And if we're talking about 30 to 35 years in retirement, that's definitely something that we want to look at. And the last one is withdrawal risk. So this is one of the bigger ones. Withdrawal risk is if you have a pension and you have Social Security, and that's not quite enough, and you need to access your 401ks and your investments, the percent to which you take money out of those accounts each year is your withdrawal rate, okay? And so study after study shows that you don't want to take more than a 4 to 5% withdrawal out of your investments on a yearly basis. That's kind of the magic number. So, you sometimes see those commercials like, what's my number? What do I need to get to? A lot of that under the hood comes down to what your withdrawal rate is. How much are you taking out of your portfolio? The retirement equation. So this one, so we know there are some things that we have total control over, okay, when we're planning for retirement. How we invest our money, like how much we have in stocks, how much we have in bonds, we have control of that. How much we're saving and how much we're spending, that's pretty much in our control. There's some things that we don't have control over, or we have some control. Your employment earnings, right? How much you're bringing in, how long you live. I mean, if you exercise and you eat right, I'd say there's probably a chance to live longer. So those are some things you have some control over. What's completely out of control is what the market's going to do, what's going to happen in D.C. We don't have control over that from a policy standpoint. So that's another, when we're looking at planning for retirement, that's kind of what we're up against. The things that we can control, go 100 miles an hour at them. Right? I mean, those are the things that we can really focus on. And saving is a big one, and I'll come back to that. Older Americans in the workforce. So this is another one that we're seeing, again, with people living a lot longer. So, you can see what are some of the reasons. Well, they have their needs, they buy extras, they need to make ends meet, decline in savings and investments. But then a lot of times it's the wants. It's they enjoy working. That social interaction that you get at work, sometimes you just don't want that to stop. A new career, that's another one. But you can see going out to 2026, projected civilian population 65 plus, you can kind of see, what percent is actually going to be working. So a 75 to 79-year-old, 15% are going to be working in retirement. So, and don't, maybe that's not because they have to. Maybe that's just because they want to. You know, I mean, that's very common. Okay, income replacement needs in retirement. So this, again, this goes back to that, how much, you know, what do I need? What's my number? There are studies shown that in this particular one, the replacement rate for what you'll need in retirement is 74% of what you're making during your working years. Now, this was so if you're making $100,000 while you're working, you're going to need $75,000, let's just say, when you're in retirement. Now, I put in big red letters, is this right for everyone? And the answer is no. It's not, because oftentimes you get to retirement and maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to enjoy. So maybe your mortgage goes away, but travel and having fun and doing things makes the difference of what goes away because of the mortgage. So there's really, nobody's going to tell you what percent you're going to have, right? That's up to you from a standpoint of determining what is it that I need to get to. It may be 100%. So what you're making while you're working, you may want exactly the same. We have clients who spend more than what they did when they were working. And you have to think about, too, it's cyclical. So when you get into retirement, you have those first several years where, hey, let's go, let's travel, let's do some things. Maybe you spend more than what you traditionally spend. Then things, you kind of get on the front porch rocking chair mode, and you're not doing as much. You're not doing as much. But then the tail end, you know, healthcare costs. So it is a cyclical type move. Okay. Sources of income. So, you know, I kind of hinted to this earlier, but when you retire, you're going to have several different resources that will be coming in. Some of you in here, if you work for the government, maybe you have a pension. Maybe that's part of what your income will be. Social Security. Maybe you have a rental house. Different things as far as from an income standpoint. So all of those would be considered fixed income resources. Okay. Maybe you inherited an annuity, and that's a monthly cash flow that's coming in. But then the difference there between what your goal is and what those fixed payments are is what comes from the portfolio. So think about that. The more you build as far as from the nest egg, the more you can essentially withdraw from a dollar standpoint to supplement your fixed income parts. And then too, you know, will you continue to work either full or part-time when you retire? Anything there, if you back down to, you know, 50% for a couple of years, all that's gonna do is enhance what your retirement income can be, because you're basically taking the place of what would come out of your income through earned income over those couple of years. So I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but so, you know, I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and, you know, the old traditional way of financial planning is you run basically a straight line calculation. You say, okay, I have X amount of dollars right now. I'm going to save this. I'm going to earn 6%. Here's what I'm going to have. Well, we all know, if those of you who have invested, the market doesn't allow us to use that calculation. There is randomness in that, okay? So one of the things that we use, and anybody in here that's an engineer, we use Monte Carlo. And so basically what that is it allows us to stress test a certain retirement scenario and come up with a probability of success. So in Huntsville, defense industry is pretty well known. So if we launch a rocket from here, what's the probability that it's going to hit its target 2,000 miles away? So same thing with this type of plan, is we know here's what we're saving, our resources. We know we want to retire in this year. What is the probability, given a bunch of randomness, that we're going to hit that goal? And so to me, in my years, this has been a much better way to communicate, because the other way we didn't have any certainty, right? So with this, we know if we run this plan through 1,000 different scenarios and we come back with a 90% success rate, That's pretty good. You know, that's going to work. If we come back with a 40% success rate, maybe we need to fine tune some things. Maybe we need to retire a couple years later, save a little bit more, you know, those types of things. This gives you an example. So here you can see, I don't know if you can see, maybe not, but there's a bunch of gray lines. So all of those gray lines represent 1,000 different scenarios that we tested this plan through. And it came back to where there was an 89% confidence. So we can comfortably go to that family and say, this scenario that you guys have laid out will work. You know, it's a 89% success rate. It's funny, though, I'll say this, and then we'll keep moving along. But depending on who I meet with in the industry that they're in, like if I met with a heart surgeon and I told them, you know, you have an 85% chance that this will work, and they turn around and they apply that to what they do, their patients would probably, you know, 85%, that's not great. So, you know, and of course I mentioned, you know, missile defense and those kinds of things. So everybody kind of has a different definition or a different agreement as far as what a probability of success should be. But we believe anything over 85% is a sustainable number. Okay, I'm going to take just a couple of minutes on this one because this is the other piece that I mentioned to you guys about how to manage risk. Okay, so if you think, you know, the first step is you go through, you know, that risk questionnaire and you kind of understand in different environments I could put up with this much risk and that's all. This is the other piece to it. This is planning around what you're going to be spending in retirement and trying to manage as much risk as possible. So think about it like a business. So if you're a business and you know that over the next 3 years you're going to have expenses of X, you're probably not going to take a whole lot of risk with that money, knowing that you have those expenses coming down the line, right? But if you know that you've got expenses that you don't see coming in for 20 years, you may go out and you may invest in some things that we'll hope would provide more return, right? Because you don't need that money so fast. So here, this is called asset dedication. And basically all we're doing here is we're looking at, okay, how much money will this family need over the next 3 to 5 years? Let's put that in the war chest and let's, you know, set that aside and not take a lot of risk, because we don't want to get into a situation where all of a sudden you're taking money out of a growth portfolio and the market drops 20%. That has a compounding effect, right? And so that can be a problem. So in this particular scenario, the family needs $50,000 a year in today's dollars to come out of their portfolio, okay? So in bucket one, which would be our really short-term conservative bucket, we have 3 years, so that's $150,000. We know that that money is going to be gone inside of 3 years, so it's going to be invested more conservatively. Bucket two gets us out 10 years. Okay, so in that scenario, we know that we can take maybe a little bit more risk with this money, but we know it's coming that we're going to be using that as well. And then any overflow would be addressed as more growth. So this is a way to really take market risk. Like I mentioned, one of the big risks of retirement is market risk. And so this helps from that standpoint that you're not taking money out in a market that's going down 20 or 30%. You don't have that compounding effect when things are going down. So that's just another way. Does anybody have any questions on this one? It makes sense. I mean, think about like an insurance company as well. You know, an insurance company kind of knows they have so many customers and what their ages are and what that expected liability is going to be, so they can invest their funds a little differently compared to, you know, younger folks. They can maybe get a little more aggressive. So same concept. This is just some examples of what different investments that go into each bucket, and I can make this available for any, if you ever need to share any of this. This shows the 4% rule. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, how much can you take out of your IRAs and 401ks without really running the risk of running out of money. And this one in particular shows different withdrawal rates. So the gray line is 4%, the blue line is 5%, and the purple line is 6%. So if you have, and they use $1 million portfolio. If you take out 4% or $40,000 a year for 30 years, you're still going to have over $1 million left over at the end. That's a 4% withdrawal rate. A 5%, you can see the impact on that is you have $200,000 left after 30 years. The 6% withdrawal rate, you run out of money after 24 years. So that's the difference in those withdrawals, and why we as planners pay such close attention to that, because it can, certainly impact a long-term plan. Social Security. So we've got about 4 minutes. Social Security. So the question here is, when do I take Social Security? So to give you all a little backdrop, Social Security, the earliest you can draw Social Security is age 62. You have to start basically taking Social Security at age 70. All of you, depending on your date of birth, you have what's considered a full retirement age. Okay, maybe it's 66, maybe it's 66 and 6 months, 67. So everybody has. That's when you can collect your full benefits. Okay, so in this scenario, what this looks at is the break even. Okay, so for every year that you delay receipt of your Social Security benefits, when you get to that point, you get an 8% step up in those benefits. Okay, so think about from age 67 to 62. If you pull at 62, you have about a 32% reduction in what you're going to collect. Okay, so that's a big thing. So one thing that really plays in, and on the other side of that, if you delay to 70, you're going to get an increase of 8% per year from as long as you delay. Now, where this comes into play is health, right? So in this particular scenario, in order for the 62 to 60 to full retirement age, how that would have to work is you'd have to live to 76 or beyond. Okay? Because if you delay to full retirement age, you're going to collect more than you would. And so at the age 76, it passes what you would have collected at 62. So that's your break even on that scenario. Age 70, so you can see there from full retirement age to 70, the break even is age 80. So if you live past age 80 in any of those scenarios, you're going to collect more in Social Security benefits than if you took it at 62. Okay, so that's, and you really have to, as you get closer to retirement, really look at health and that whole thing, because you don't want to run into the situation where you delay and you're in bad health and you don't collect out of the system, because the only death benefit, of course, your surviving spouse would, if his or her income was lower than yours, would take over your income. But the only real death benefit for Social Security is $255. So that's what you get from Social Security. So okay, here's the savings slide, and then we're gonna wrap things up. So younger folks in here, we're gonna look. So the way this table works, this will be your years to retirement. So this is 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. Okay, all I did here was I just used a 5% rate of return. So let's just assume you make 5% per year. Okay, if you have 30 years and you save $5,000 a year, after 30 years, you're going to have about $350,000. If you save $20,000 a year into your 401k and you have 30 years as your time horizon, you're going to have $1.4 million. Okay, so that's the big thing. So if you compare that to the same scenario, but you only have 10 years to retirement, you can see it's about $1 million difference, right? So just that power of compounding, the earlier you start, I don't care if it's $100 or whatever it is per month, the earlier you start, the more power you have in determining what you'll have at retirement. So that's something when I'm meeting with younger folks, I always try to encourage. I know it's hard, especially, newlyweds trying to make ends meet, but if there's any way to sock a little away, especially, you think about 401k plans, a lot of times those companies will match. So it's in your incentive to try to contribute up to what they're going to match, because sometimes they'll require you to contribute to get that match. So, that's money on the table that you certainly want to participate in. All right, the last one, this is a Secure Act, and then we'll move into questions. So the deal with the Secure Act is prior to this law coming into play, at 70 and a half, you had to start taking money out of your IRA accounts. So that was the rule. So you think about it, you put money in all these years, you never paid taxes on it, it's grown to whatever the number is. Now you got to start paying taxes at 70 and a half. So you have to take a minimal amount out each year, pay taxes. The law has changed that to 72. Okay, so now instead of 70 and a half, it's now 72. Okay, to me, and the one thing that we're driving home right now with clients is, prior to this, if you inherited an IRA, okay, if you were an adult child and you inherit an IRA, you were able to take distributions over your entire lifetime. So let's say you inherit a $300,000 IRA. You had your whole lifetime to take out a certain amount to pay taxes on. This law changed it. You have to take it all out within 10 years. Okay, so you don't have to take an equal amount out each year. It just all has to be out within 10 years. And you have to pay taxes on it. So that is going to put a crunch on children who inherit. It's always, now granted, it's great to inherit something, but from a tax standpoint, it's a lot different now under this law than what it was under the prior way. So the other thing with that is, it used to be where you had to stop contributing to an IRA at 70 and a half. The law now allows you to continue contributing. So that's a benefit to this, is if you're still working and you still want to contribute, you can do that beyond age 70 and a half. Estate planning, I'll say this quickly, it's very important to have a will. Powers of attorney, I was talking earlier about the unexpected. That's part of that mission, vision, value, and what you're wanting for your family. Having a will in place, powers of attorney, very important. And that's it. So that's our group. So I went over by 4 minutes. So we have a few minutes for questions. I know we talked about a lot. Like I said to Doc, all of this is be made available if you'd like it. But I hope it was informative. But any questions? We have some time.
I work for the government, and President Trump, he passed this act where we don't get our Social Security taken out, like from August until the end of the year. It's like a tax deferred. How does that affect, I guess, me filing taxes? I don't know if you're familiar with it or if you heard about it.
Yeah, that's so.
So they're not taking out Social Security, and we couldn't opt out of not doing it.
Yeah. I'm not sure the answers to how. I mean, I think it's just basically that it's not being withheld, essentially.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I'll see if I can find out. I'll just shoot it over to you.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes.
So this is kind of like an elementary question on investing. So after you have your savings, your 401k, all that, what would be your advice on next level investment? Would you recommend stock, bond, or one or the other combination?
Yeah, so that's not an elementary question. That's a good question. And it's one we get, because if you think about it, you can only put so much into your 401k, right? A lot of times, if you're contributing to a 401k, you cannot do an IRA because there are compatibility rules. If you make over a certain amount, you can't do a deductible IRA and contribute to your 401k. So if you're pigeonholed there, beyond that, You can do mutual funds. You can do, I mentioned like there's a tax, like a brokerage account. So that would be something that you would just contribute after tax money to. I am a huge advocate of dollar cost averaging. And basically what that means is if you pick a certain amount that you can contribute each month, you just have it set up to where it comes right out of your paycheck or whatever, and it goes right in and you're paying yourself. Because what you're doing is if you're contributing on a monthly or a quarterly basis over 15 or 20 years, when the market pulls back, you have money going in. So it's helping you over time. So you're doing the same thing in your 401k, but you can set that up with a brokerage account as well. Yep. Surely there's got to be some more questions. Okay. Well, guys, again, I can't tell you how. Oh, you got one more?
In regards to stock, a lot of people just a tad bit of information. I know that stock is it's a lot more than what I'm saying, but just a tad bit of information on people who, like you said, it's more of a long term. It's nothing that if you're going to buy something in the next 6 months or so that you want to do. But those who want to invest a little bit, just give us a tad bit, a nugget on some what you would refer or recommend for your customers.
So the first part would be determining the amount of risk that you want to take and having an understanding. If you're investing in stock and things go the way they did in March, the market does go down. From a standpoint of what to pick, so I'll start with diversification. Okay, so the risk in just purchasing one or two stocks is you really don't have a lot of diversification. So if you're just getting started, my suggestion would be you can look at things like index funds where you're buying a whole group of stocks. So that gives you that diversification. And there's a bunch of them. I mentioned up there the S&P 500. I mean, you can buy an index fund that tracks the S&P 500. So you don't have just one stock, you have 500 stocks. So you are technically diversified. And so that is, I guess a starting point. Now, as you get further along and you have, and I hate to use the word play money because it's all important, but if you have play money and you want to invest in individual stocks, that's great. As long as you have, certainly have the time to be able to watch that, because I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I've through 20 years, I've seen things go south pretty quickly. I mean, with the financial crisis, a lot of banks never opened their doors again. And so that's the risk in investing in individual stocks, is that stock could go to zero. If you're investing in an index fund and one of those companies within the 500, your risk is very small. So that's the advantage of going through an index fund or something along those lines. Anyone else? Well, again, I can't tell you, I enjoyed this.
Right.
Oh, we have another one?
Yes. So if you're close to retirement, would you, because I have the option of taking out a lump sum of money or receive a lifetime income benefit. So I have both of those options. Which option do you think is best?
Okay, so I'm guessing you're in some type of a pension plan?
Yes.
Okay. So it depends on what the annuity payments look like. I mean, it's basically a calculation that you have to kind of do under the hood to determine if I take the pension over 30 years, it's going to add up to this, compared to if I take the pension and take the lump sum and it grows to this. That's kind of what you're comparing. So in a lot of cases, I've seen the lump sum come out better than the pension, the annuity. But, again, and then also, with the pension, if it's a publicly traded company, or really any company that offers it, you run the risk of, if something happened to that company, being underfunded on the pension as well. So by taking the lump sum, you put the ball in your court, basically. Yeah, it would just be, it would roll over to an IRA. And so there wouldn't be a tax consequence to doing that. And so then it would just be invested based on the way that,
State, though, do you think the state is more stable, or
so it's a
retirement
like
is state.
RSA.
yes?
Yeah. I don't know that the RSAs, do the RSAs give a lump sum option? Okay. I know the state is a pretty good annuity. I mean, I think they do. It's years times high 3 times 2.015%. I think is the factor they use. So it's a good. Definitely the state pension is good. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, thank you all for letting me be with you tonight. We certainly enjoyed it. So thank you, Doc, for inviting me.
Awesome job, Jason. I mean, awesome job. Give him another hand. We appreciate it so much, and got a room full of people, and got many on several on watching YouTube. We will have some more of this, and be working with Jason on some other things, and we need more information on this. Us and even in not that we are a multicultural church, but in the African American community, we need more information. Because what happens is that we make money and we spend it. We make money and we spend it, and the more we make, the more we spend. And so many times we can't take that $100, $200, $300 and invest it back in the market, or a savings, or annuity, whatever it may be, because we spend it. Now, I ain't trying to get on anyone. We have to change that mentality. We have to start, we say, well, I can't afford to save. Yeah, just take, instead of buying, the Gucci shoes, just, nothing wrong with Gucci shoes, okay? Nothing wrong with that. I wear a pair here and there, okay? But maybe we need to take that money and invest it in, and then make money, then you can buy that other stuff, right? And so I'm not here. I'm just trying to encourage us, to do the right thing, and go see a financial advisor. Go see Jason. I think he'll mind that. He didn't do this for no. He probably like he didn't do this for no kind of advertisement. Trust me, none of that. But sometimes we need to talk to someone, and go see that advisor and say, hey, how can you help me? And and pay whatever they charge, whatever for that, and make you better. I mean, right? I mean, that's very important. That's all I say. Your money is important. So those who are been live on YouTube, just bless you. We thank God for just Him giving us information, and it's awesome. You all have a blessed night. Remember to save, because you're going to need it. Because we living longer, right? And I want to live longer. I'm one of those kind of people that I never want to retire, but I want to stop doing what I want doing and do what I want to do when I want to do it, okay? I always want to work doing something, but I want to have some control over that. So I got to put some money back. I got to put some money back. So hey, y'all have a good night. I'm Doc Rock. Y'all join me at the top. See you later. Bye. Enjoyed it.